Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to the USA Prepares. We broadcast 2 hours from the Missouri Ozark Mountains, Monday through Friday. Nathan is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. I'm Vincent Finelli. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. Welcome, Rick.
Morning. It's nice to have you back.
Hey, well, thank you. Thank you. Let me give out the number. Class, if you'd like to call us, 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. Rick, there's a scandal that I've been talking about. It's a pretty large scandal. And
it's 4 or 8 feet long, huh?
It is. Yes.
Scandal.
It is both. It's 4 and 8 feet long. And, class, at the risk of being repetitive, I'd like to just give the highlights of this scandal. And I'll tell you the latest development. The latest development is pretty shocking as well. Maybe as shocking as the scandal itself. So, you know that we mentioned on this broadcast, and I believe we're the only ones talking about this, that the fluorescent light tube that was developed over 80 years ago has been banned from production by the Environmental Protection people in the U.S. Federal Government Corporation. Now, the tubes are known as T12s and T8s and T5s. The T12 tubes are 12/8 of an inch in diameter. The T8s are 8/8 of an inch in diameter, and the T5s are 5/8 of an inch in diameter. Then the length would be 96 inches or 48 inches or 20 inches or, some number. Well, the ones that I'm talking about are the T12s. And the T12s are the ones that have been around for a very long time. They have 2 pins on each end. 12/8 of an inch is 1.5 inches in diameter. The 8/8 is 1 inch in diameter. And 5/8 is 5/8 of an inch in diameter, okay? So these fluorescent lights, not the compact, these standard tubes, have been around for 80 years. Well, the EPA decided that now we can't have them anymore. So in 2012, they said no more. Some companies got a 2-year extension for making the bulbs, and some companies are still able to produce specialty bulbs. Well, here's what's happened. All of the companies that manufacture the ballasts of these for these fluorescent lights have stopped production, all of them. And if you want a ballast, you're going to have to find either new old stock, and that's abbreviated NOS, on eBay, new old stock, meaning they're brand new, they haven't been used, but they're old. They've been produced, a while ago. And if you want to buy fluorescent tubes, you might have to buy them used. So I've had to do that. We have 40 fluorescent fixtures here at the farm of the long tube type. And because our investment is $40 per fluorescent fixture, I was not going to let that $1,600 investment go to waste. So I was able to buy some 8-foot tubes used. And I found a few new ones. So I have a lifetime supply, at least my lifetime, of fluorescent tubes. And I bought some new old stock ballasts. I bought 5 for the 8-foot tubes and 5 for the 4-foot tubes. So I'm okay. And I suggest if you want to preserve your fluorescent fixtures that you get some bulbs and get the ballast if you think that you need them as well. Okay. So yesterday I called a guy. I bought something that I think is pretty interesting, and he's going to be an instructor. His name is Tal, T-A-L. So Tal is from Israel, and he's an electrical engineer. And his company, which he founded, along with his partner Michelle, make a fluorescent light fixture that emits ultraviolet light. And what this is it's a backing plate with two fluorescent tubes that are ultraviolet light that you put inside your air handler of your furnace. And it will disinfect the air flowing past the tubes. So I want to kill any bacteria. I want to make sure no mold grows. I want to stop it right there. So I bought this, and it was about $40. Shipped, no tax. And so I called him up, and I said, I really like this. I found him. He didn't find me. And so we had a really nice conversation yesterday. And I said, what about the ballast? He said, yeah, the company that made the ballast for him went out of business. So here he has a product that's a great product for disinfecting the air inside your air handling system, your heating and cooling system. And probably half the homes in the United States have these kind of systems like we have. So here's a great disinfection system. And the ballasts are no longer being manufactured in this country. So we had to figure out another way. And I'm not sure what that answer is yet. And I said, what about the tubes? Are they from China? And he said, yes. So the tubes come from China. The ballasts are not available in the United States. He has to either use his existing stock, shut down the company, or figure out another plan. And that's the latest part of this scandal. Now, where do you see these ultraviolet light air purifiers? Well, if you go to a restaurant and you look on the walls or in the kitchen, you'll see these bluish light blue light coming from a fixture. What happens is that air circulates around that, and it disinfects the air with ultraviolet light. They use fluorescent tubes. They use fluorescent tube ballasts, which are no longer manufactured in the United States. That's the second part of the scandal. Rick, what are your thoughts about what I've just said? I mean, I said a mouthful.
I know, it's all about marketing, and that's what it's truly about. EPA aside, and their environmental laws for protecting us, I'm concerned more about where is the money, follow the money. And that's where it will ultimately go, because this is just another way to make us have to pay for things we don't want but are stuck with. I remember when they did the same thing with roofing nails, and they changed the designs. And it's going this way in everything. Automobiles. It used to be that an automobile it was built so that it would last a long time, and if something wore out, you could replace it with another part, but that part should last for the remainder of the life of the automobile. It is truth with my 280Z. But today, Mopar has engineered their cars to wear out. You can set your watch to a battery. I mean, in terms of when it's going to wear out. You can time it. It's so precision in design for wearing out that it's like a regular clock for you. Now, this whole concept is one of the reasons why capitalism is doomed, I hope, like communism. Each has within their system of concepts disadvantages. And capitalism is now starting to show just exactly how bad it can be with Rothschild still in control. Thanks.
Okay, I've got some comments. I'm glad you mentioned these things. Okay, so you mentioned auto parts. I've been telling our class that we can shop at O'Reilly's. We can shop at O'Reilly's is a auto parts store, a chain in the Midwest. They're headquartered in Springfield, Missouri. So we can buy our auto parts for repairs of our vehicles from O'Reilly's, or we go to AutoZone, which is across the street. Well, AutoZone decided that they wanted our business because we buy a lot of auto parts we fix vehicles for neighbors and for ourselves. And we have a number of cars and trucks here, and our neighbors too. And so we're constantly buying auto parts. So AutoZone said, I'll tell you what, we want your business. We're going to give you a discount. So they gave us a discount, and then they changed their mind. Then they decided, well, you know what? what we have to do is we'll match somebody else's price. So we would go in there and we'd say, okay, here's how much it costs at Rock Auto. And they would match that. And then they'd said, well, you know what? We can't do that because Rock Auto charges shipping. So we'll match the Rock Auto price plus their shipping costs. So we bring that to them. And this is a period this is going on over a year now. Well, the latest thing is top management came into the store and said, no, we're not doing that anymore. We're not going to give you these discounts anymore. So what happened next was they said, all right, well, if you want that water pump, we'll sell it to you, and we have it right now. Now, if you want it from Rock Auto, it's going to take 3 days to get it to you. So we'll match the Rock Auto price with overnight shipping. So we'll match that. So now we've got a $30 water pump or an $18 water pump with $24.99 overnight shipping. And that costs more than the $32 water pump.
The whole thing is designed to fool you, to make you think you're getting a bargain.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you what our son...
It's sleight of hand. I remember a time when things were sold two ways. There was cheapest and Best Buy. And what's happened is Best Buy is no longer available. Snap-on, Craftsman, etc., are no longer following that route of per dollar spent, you get more bang for your buck. And so today, what you have is instead of 3 different places for cheapest, you now have 20. I remember how tools used to be in that same direction until Harbor Freight came into play. Everything comes from China. Excuse me.
Let me tell you the rest of the story. So the water pump is $18 at Rock Auto. But AutoZone said, we'll match that, but you got to give us shipping. And we have it now, so shipping is $24.99. So the total price of the water pump from Rock Auto went from $18 plus $6.99 shipping to $42.99. AutoZone said, we'll sell it to you right now for $32, which is the regular price. So our son says, okay, right. So now he calls AutoZone, and he says, listen, I want to buy a water pump, and I'm going to pick it up in 3 days. I'm going to pick it up in 3 days. And then he goes in with the standard $6.99 shipping. So he is not going to take this crap from AutoZone. AutoZone's management is out of control. I really have a low opinion of AutoZone. Class, what we're talking about here is large corporations keep changing the rules. And it's very difficult. It's very difficult to work with them because they keep changing the rules. And I'm talking about AutoZone, but it's not just AutoZone. Sears, same thing. Satisfaction guarantee to your money back. You buy something from them, and you could always feel confident that, if something went wrong or the product failed prematurely, they would take care of you. And what I found is you go to Sears and they go, we don't do that anymore. We don't work for the customer anymore. We work for the shareholders. Well, Rick mentioned automobiles. Okay, so I'm looking at an article that I wanted to talk about with Rick about Ford. Ford is recalling 1.4 million cars. 1.4 million. That's a lot of cars. Why? Well, because the steering wheel bolts get loose. The steering wheel bolts get loose. How is that possible? How is it possible that a steering wheel can become loosened? How is that possible? Now, I have worked on a number of vehicles. We even have at our automotive shop a steering wheel puller. It's a special tool for removing a steering wheel. It is difficult to get a steering wheel off, right? You've got to go through a lot of steps. Well, Ford uses these bolts, and they loosen. Obviously, they're substandard. Obviously, they're not large enough. Obviously, they don't have Loctite on them so that they don't come loose. Well, the solution is recall 1.4 million vehicles, take the steering wheel apart, take the bolts out, and replace them with new bolts that have nylon locking mechanisms in them. So it's like a bolt that's drilled out a little bit and has a nylon bump in it and the nylon causes more friction, so the bolt is tighter in the threads, and it's less likely to back out. Well, why didn't they think of this the first time? Well, I guess making those bolts were a little more expensive.
The thing that bothers me is the concept of the DeLorean, that you tried to make something as good as it could be made so that it didn't wear out, that it didn't need replacements. My 280Z right now has got 300,000 miles on the engine, and yet the port pressure between one port and the other is less than 1/4 pound. True.
Well, it's interesting.
That means that engine, by the way, that means that engine is going to last another 200,000 miles.
Mm-hmm. Well, the DeLorean was a great concept car made out of stainless steel skin, so that heck, it wouldn't rust. You could even drive that in Missouri with all the beet juice salt that we have here. That body would not rust, which is kind of nice. But there's some other problems, and DeLorean. Do you remember that he was involved in selling drugs? He was a drug dealer in order to raise enough money to keep his factory going in, in Ireland? Yeah, he had a lot of problems getting that car off the ground. He did. He got off the ground, and it was very interesting. But there were a few problems that he had, and it was actually insurmountable, and that's why he failed. But that was a great concept. It really was. Needed some refinement, but still a great concept. I saw one that was red, a red DeLorean. Now, class, the DeLorean was stainless steel, and so it would look like a brushed stainless steel finish, kind of like a modern refrigerator. You'd see it at one of these big box stores. That's what the exterior was like. But the problem was, if you banged it up, you'd have to get a new stainless steel panel. Well, I saw one that was red, and that's because it got banged up, and they put some body filler on it, Bondo, sanded it out, and now what do? Well, we got to paint the car. So that's what they did. They painted it red. So I saw a red DeLorean, which is probably pretty rare. Well, Rick, my computer's home.
I know, the end of days.
I'm looking at my Windows computer, Windows XP. This darn software, I can't wait to move the studio into the first floor, because when I do, I'm going to redo the software on my number one computer here for the broadcast, and I'm looking forward to dumping Windows XP and replacing it with Linux. Other computers we have here are running Linux, and they don't give me any problems at all, just this Windows one. And I refuse to buy another copy of Microshaft Windows. Rick Miller, and I'll be right back. Dr. Richard Allen Miller is with us. DocRam.com, DocRam.com. Also, if you'd like to go to Richard Allen Miller and peruse the offerings, his writings, RichardAlan Miller.com. So, Rick, there was an article that I was reading. It's pretty interesting. It was about an astronaut, and this guy has been in space for about a year. He's been flying around for about a year, circling the Earth, and he grew. He grew 2 inches. Literally grew 2 inches.
Like me, I'm shrinking because of gravity. Well, I remember I was 5'11" and a half, and now I'm 5'10". That's a truth.
Yeah. Well, yes.
Gravity, the weight of the Earth is pulling me down.
Well, and here's something very interesting about what happened to this astronaut. His DNA changed 7%.
Yeah, that's the gamma ray part of it. That's the creepier side. It goes downhill from there. Mm-hmm. It turns out that there's no way to screen any of that. How are we ever going to go to Mars in a Chevrolet? I can't. It isn't going to happen. It can't happen. It isn't possible. You can't screen the gamma rays, and they're going to knock things down and create all kinds of weird mutations in your body. Mm-hmm. So that's where the avatar concept came in. You know, you have a diving tank, but the diving tank can't be made thick enough for space. So what you have to do is become black slime mold, something that thrives in radiation. And the thing goes weirder. I just posted a few minutes ago on this new concept of cloning sleeves for your consciousness. As your body wears out, we'll create a sleeve to put your consciousness in it. Check that out at docram.com. That's creepy. And the implication of transhumanism and where we're going with the difference between cheapest and best buy. It's a bad thing. It's like
I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned this because so this astronaut, his name is Scott Kelly, and he was out there circling the Earth 340 days. So yes, he did grow 2 inches, and NASA is saying that the trip made him a new man. Now he has an identical twin. So they compared the DNA of the astronaut with his identical twin, and they found out that 93% of his DNA returned to normal after returning to Earth, but 7% of it is altered. And they're trying to figure out what this means. But that's the story about astronaut Scott Kelly, the longest single space flight in U.S. history.
Does that have anything to do with the 38 different genders that we now enjoy? I'm sorry, but I have to walk away from all of this crap. It's just nuts.
Yeah.
The whole thing is nuts. The whole thing.
I would not want to be a classroom teacher, in high school today, where on Monday, I know this guy is Michael, and on Tuesday it's Michelle. I mean, he decides he's gonna
or Missy, worse than Michael and Mitchell. Yeah, Mitchell.
Yeah,
it goes downhill because everything is rotting from the inside out, and it's time. Some voice of reason comes in here and says, "What distinguished the United States from France?" Vichy soir.
One of the things that distinguished us from other countries, it was our language. And I believe that because of the fluidity of our language, the lack of preciseness sometimes, we were able to be more creative. We were able to be more inventive. However, we weren't all that great in mathematics, which was precise. So if you look at students today, now it's gone too far. Now what they've done is they've shortened our language with like LOL. These cryptic terms that we can't, that aren't part of our language. That the police have the police have their own dialect of the English language, a subset, and nurses have theirs. Yeah, and doctors have theirs. In the delivery room, a doctor pulls out the baby and he turns to the nurse, holds the baby, and he says FLK, and the nurse knows what that means. Funny looking kid. I mean, they have theirs. The lawyers have theirs, and but during World War II, we had slang, and it was difficult for the Germans to understand our language and the Japanese, and our language slang had advantages for us. And I really believe that it helped us become more inventive. But it's turned past that, and now we've become sedentary, and I don't see much innovation with young people at all. Literally, I don't see much. And, we're now saying that adults are now spending 25% of their time online. 25% of their time online. Way too much. How are they doing anything else? And that was one of the problems they had with the meetup people. They were keyboard warriors. They could read about it. They could click the mouse about it. They could regurgitate it, but they didn't do it. Meaning they didn't use the knowledge that they had
ethics and morals. The distinction between ethics and morals. And that's what made the United States different, was that we all had a common set of values.
Yeah, and my dad told me that when they were on the troop ships, they would have a code word or code phrase to get back on, and it would be red ripe raspberries, and the Japanese couldn't say R's and be lead like lasbellies, and so what's the phrase? Lead like lasberries. Bang! They'd shoot them right there. And that's what they did. That's the kind of stuff that Americans were really, really great at. That we seem to have lost.
People
No. I mean, the pass phrase to get onto the ship, into the camps. We were very creative that way. One of the when it came to the Germans, one of the pass phrases was Tufsky Shatitsky. And they couldn't say that either. They could not get it out. What's passphrase? Tufsky Shatitsky. And bang. They couldn't get it right. That's the kind of stuff we used to do.
Yes.
That's exactly.
But there's something else going on where there used to be a common value regarding guns. For example, you'll notice that and I just posted this one last night on Reality News, the idea that every single high school shooting has involved an individual that was on psychotropic drugs of some kind. And nobody has mentioned that in the media. It's all about gun control. Now, it's not about gun control. It's about individual kids that are on meds that shouldn't be. And what's happening is there's a statistical occurrence of individuals not responding correctly to Zoloft, and it's crazy. And yet, my doctor, who's a Seventh-day Adventist doctor, is trying to put me on meds. Why? So that I have a recurring need to go back to his office every 4 times a year just for prescription. He doesn't have to do anything, but he just checks my vitals and says, "Oh, your heart rate is 151, and it says here that you're supposed to be at 130, which means I either put you on these meds or I fire you." And I say back to him, "Cuff me." And I dropped it to 129. That man is looking for a way to put me on meds so that I am required to go see him 4 times a year. And that opiate situation that has gone completely out of control is your pharmaceutical, and chemistry is the best way of life. The better living through chemistry, I believe, is how they used to say it. And the whole thing is nuts.
That was DuPont's slogan.
It goes into our values and our word systems and our evaluations of one individual to another, and the fact that one size does not fit all.
Better living through chemistry was the DuPont Chemical Company's slogan. They stopped using that. As a matter of fact, they had accidents with their tractor trailers, so they stopped putting the DuPont logo on the tractor trailers when they were making their deliveries, because they were getting a bad reputation for crashing, and people go, "Whoa, that's a DuPont truck," because it says DuPont right on the side. When you type in the name Adam Lanza, A-D-A-M, first name Lanza, L-A-N-Z-A, last name, he was born in 2012. Excuse me, he was born in 1992. In 2012, there was an alleged shooting at the Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut. And allegedly there were 28 deaths. And this guy, Adam Lanza, this young man, allegedly shot his mother, Nancy Lanza, in the head at their home before he went to the elementary school where he allegedly killed some more people. Well, if you look at this guy's picture, he looks totally out of it, absolutely spaced out. He does not look normal. If you look at Nicholas Cruz, the guy who allegedly shot up the school in Florida, he looks, when you see the videos of him, he is absolutely out of it. Dr. Richard Allen Miller is with us. Rick, as you know, Stephen Hawking died, a global treasure physicist. And Dr. Hawking had some final thoughts that he wanted to leave with us. And our challenges are quite significant. He thought that we could be wiped out by an asteroid, by climate change, by artificial intelligence, and by overpopulation. These are things that you and I and others here on this broadcast have been talking about for years. So we're in total agreement with them. And the interesting thing is that the climate change is let's just talk about that first. And our physical resources are being depleted at quite an alarming rate. And there are rising temperatures, the reduction of the polar ice caps, the deforestation, of the vast forests that we have. We're cutting down timbers. As a matter of fact, even to bring that point home, I looked at the timber on our farm, and I was talking to some of the locals who are, older than I, who are natives here in Missouri, and they said, "Oh yeah. They cut down the timber on your farm, decades ago, and that's how they built Springfield, Missouri. They cut the timbers, the hardwoods, and the softwoods on your farm. They logged it, and they used that timber to build Springfield, Missouri, which is, 50, 60 miles away. So, yes, we have been cutting timber down, and if we replant it, that's nice. And if we don't, that's terrible. So we have been doing things that have changed the climate, but it's not just us, right, Rick? Do you agree that climate change is among the very top threats that we face?
Yale University just came out with a statement about the 2 weather bombs that are about to hit the Earth. And the 2 of them have to do with global warming and then global cooling. And it is historical. We have dropped ice plugs down in and seen that it has happened before, where the Earth first heats up, and as a result, the Earth needs to reboot and goes through a day after tomorrow. That is an accurate movie of what is about to happen to North America. They're already showing signs of that up near the Northwest Territories, and then you start looking over at Iceland and what's happening there, Reykjavik, etc. It is going to happen because the currents that run the ocean are all gone now, and they need to reboot. And this is something that happens with a pole shift and changes of our sun. China has just developed an incredible burst of light laser, also posted on Facebook. That's to stop incoming meteors and or dead stars going through our solar system. Now, Nibiru is a reality. And the way I'm playing it is I know I don't know what exactly is going to happen, but I can tell you, and I've repeated this before, that the infrared signature on this sun is wrong for it being a brown dwarf. And some friends of mine at JPL have actually suggested, that could be accounted for simply by putting a Dyson sphere around the sun. That's what our ancestors have done, most likely, as an Occam's razor thing. And what we have right now is an event, we'll call it the event, where the future comes into the present to collect the rent.
Rick, when we come back, let's continue this discussion about Stephen Hawking's warnings to us about climate change, asteroids, artificial intelligence, and overpopulation. And let's throw into that mix the power consumption that we are observing with Bitcoin and how much electricity Bitcoin is consuming in the mining process. It's huge. It is estimated to be higher than the Republic of Ireland. Unbelievable. 42 terawatts of electricity a year. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Here we go. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Doc Rams with us, Dr. Richard Alan Miller. If you'd like to go to his website, richardalanmiller.com. Richard, A-L-A-N, Miller.com. So, Rick, we were talking about climate change. Stephen Hawking's warnings to us, his final words of wisdom before he passed away yesterday at age 76. And he told us that climate change is a big one. And then, you know, as we look at some of the things we do, one of them is that we use an enormous amount of electricity mining Bitcoins. We really do. It's estimated that it is now grown to over 42 terawatt hours of electricity a year, placing it ahead of New Zealand and Hungary in those countries' power consumption. We have, there are 2 little Bitcoin mining operations that are in New York State, and it's been shown that 10% of the power consumption of this area of New York State is being used by Bitcoin mining. More electricity than is used by the Georgia Pacific company in the manufacturing of products. Georgia Pacific manufactures paper products. So we're doing some pretty dumb things, in my opinion, because electricity is not free. It's not. Your thoughts?
Well, I don't know how to respond to any of this. All of it's crazy making. It's not the country I served and protected. The whole thing is going downhill in a handbasket with values, and the distinction of ethics and morals. And I don't even know what we're doing in other countries. And yet, I'm being blamed for it.
All right. How about...
How do you feel about that? How do you feel about somebody making a decision for you and you're having to accept the responsibility of that?
Are you talking about nuclear energy?
Yeah, I'm talking about it all.
Okay.
Like
so
every single thing, including the way high school is run.
Okay. All right. Let me give you my reaction. At our farmhouse, we have some products that are manufactured by the General Electric Corporation. For example, our electric circuit breaker panels are made by General Electric. Absolutely world class. Fabulous. Great design, great construction. That same company has gotten out of the appliance manufacturing business. They've decided that that's not where the money is. I guess the money is stealing information from people, selling it to the government, military industrial contracts, blowing up the planet, nuclear power generation. I think that's where they think the money is. So, and finance. I mean, there's General Electric has a finance arm. So they've gotten away from their core business, which was making really good, affordable products for we the villagers, and they've gotten into finance, and they've gotten into the manufacturing of nuclear power plants and weapons and things like that. So they're in the business of destruction. So they've gone from being a good company to being an evil company, in my opinion. I despise the top management of General Electric. And I've mentioned on the air, here's another component to that, the management philosophy of the General Electric Corporation is to fire the bottom 10% of their employees every year. So you get an employee evaluation. If you happen to land at the bottom, you're gone. It's as simple as that. Now, they think that's a good way to handle it. Well, you know, there are people who can be really, really good, but they could be at the bottom 10%. Well, General Electric will fire you. I mean, that's the way they operate. I really don't like their business model. I think they're very greedy. Their former CEO, Jack Welch, he was praised as being like a brilliant businessman. Okay, Jack, how about these nuclear power plants that you oversaw the development and construction of? How about you approving them? How about the board of directors of General Electric? They should all be ashamed of themselves. How about how did they get past the concept that let's litter the coast of Japan with nuclear reactors? Wouldn't that be a great idea? And then if there's a flooding situation, they can all melt down, which 4 of them did. That is General Electric's management philosophy. Profit, profit, profit. Greed, and profit. That's how I see it for General Electric. So that's my thoughts on those guys. Rick, asteroids, that's a big problem too. Now the latest thought is...
Listen, it's distractions, actually, because what exactly is about to happen, we have no idea, and we have no control of it. To think that we do is an illusionary delusion, and control is a fantasy. It isn't being run by man, it's being run by God. And God has a plan, and it always, from my glass half full point of view, there is an opportunity for change. And that's the way I'm choosing to approach this whole thing about the end of days and revelations. And really, there's nothing I'm going to be able to do about it. I can, in my own way, try and become less dependent on the grid by growing my own food. I have a program right now that is catching on. It's interesting. All the people in permaculture, I've got this guy that came to visit me, Clay Roop, he may call in. He pointed out to me that he's been following permaculture, and not one of those people in permaculture has ever heard of me, and yet I was the man that brought permaculture and that whole thing into True when what's his face came in from New Zealand. Bill Mollison, the reason that it's all fragmented, nobody knows who I am in agriculture. How does that work? I'm the guy that did the original interview with Bill Mollison, and yet Stepholzer, whomever, they've never even heard of me. Now, how does that work? Where my concept is, we went into Chattanooga. I was staying for 3 weeks. I stayed in Cloudland in a monolithic dome, and I did a series of workshops and talks all through Chattanooga over a 3-week period, Atlanta. And what happened afterwards is that Chattanooga's logo changed to right here, right now. They today, as a result, produce 40% of the food consumed in Chattanooga. The Chattanooga River, Chattanooga has every restaurant on that river now has a greenhouse right next to the restaurant that grows food that's used in the salads and production of vegetables for the food. Now, that's different than New York City that might produce 3% or less of the food consumed in New York City. It all has to be brought in. And yet, across the river on the Hudson in New Jersey, every single skyscraper top is a restaurant, garden, feeding the cafeteria in that building. And that's just across the river. It's a concept of mentat, of a way of thinking, of sovereignty, of where you are less dependent on the reality of communication. How many people, raise your hands, how many people have a plan right now that if all of a sudden this went blank and you had no more communication, where's your wife and your son going to meet you? How many have a plan?
I do.
I know you do, but how many people do you think in your neighborhood do?
Oh, hardly anybody. Well, maybe a couple people, but
Why?
almost.
When, in fact, you have become so accustomed to everything being the way it is that you've not thought about, what if we took that all away from you right now? And that was gone. Once that happens, Nobody has a plan. Nobody's thought about those kinds of things because they're too busy learning how to thumb wrestle with their typing skills. That's crazy. And technology is purposefully being designed to dumb down America. And now, with this whole concept of a sleeve, where you can put your intelligence in an artificial body that we've cloned, get a grip.
Okay, since you mentioned that, Rick, there's a startup company that it's unbelievable. This company is offering people the chance to digitally preserve their memories forever. So you can upload, the claim of this company is that you can upload what's in your mind digitally, and it can be stored for later use. The only problem with this is it's fatal. So if you want your memories to be stored, you're going to have to die. They're going to have to kill you in order to do this. I mean, this is, and there are people who have signed up for this. There are people who have signed up to have their memories digitally saved in the hopes that they can be restored later on, maybe in 100 years or so. But it is 100% fatal going through this chemical process of removing and storing your memories. Unbelievable. And people are willing to do this. I got to tell you, people are really dumb. I mean, really, really dumb. I'm flabbergasted.
That's what the problem is. Everybody has a fear of death, when in fact, death is the waking up. You're asleep, and people don't realize it. We're all asleep, and only just a few of us are starting to get it. What do you think a past life is?
Well, I'll tell you what, I lost a dear friend, Norm Shealy. Just mentioned, you've been in the studio here. Norm Shealy was here, Dr. Howard Shane was here, a couple others were here, and Norm Shealy was here, and the guys were just in the studio, just chatting, and Norm Shealy mentioned past life regression. I said, wow, I don't know anything about that. I'd like to know more about it. I lost a dear friend who was right in the room right then and there. He raised his hands in the surrender position. Doc Ram's with us, Dr. Richard Allen Miller. Joining us, Margaret from Spain. Welcome, Margaret.
Hello, Vincent. How are you?
Hey, now when you say Spain, are you talking about the country of Spain, or is this a city or town?
I'm talking about the country of Spain in the far west called Galicia.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad you called. May I ask very quickly before you ask your question, how did you hear about USA Prepares?
Oh, I had a head injury about 2 years ago, and all I could do to retrain my brain was to get onto YouTube, and it all happened that I've pretty much been awake and pretty contrary, but now, the whole thing's changed. I've heard you. I've been listening for 2 years. I think Rick is absolutely fantastic. You're also fantastic, and I really appreciate what you do, but it's been through YouTube.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's
I found y'all. Pardon me?
Yeah, would that be Ron Gibson? The Ron Gibson channel?
Oh, yeah, I go through Ron Gibson because he has other programs that I also watch. I watch all the bad programs.
Well, I'm so glad that you've joined us. And I just want to tell you, before you get into your question, very quickly,
sure.
Whatever you think of Rick Miller, he is way more than that. When he's in person, he's unbelievable. He's just absolutely brilliant. I cannot say enough wonderful things about my dear friend.
You're making me have goose pimples listening to you because I feel it.
You're going to make me
it's absolutely.
Stop it. Let's go forward. What's up?
Well, I want to know what's up because I have a PhD from the University of Texas at Austin from '84. I was an older PhD. I'm now 68. I'm not much younger than you. I've lived through all this stuff. I was not a leader like you, but I was certainly, following. Anyway, now I get to this point where I'm newly retired. I've been living out of the country for 23 years because I just can't handle it. I've retired to a place where I can think and meditate and try to figure out what's going on. I am a speech communication, interpersonal, and organizational PhD. I've been a volunteer and a university professor all my life. I would not go back into a university now for anything. I'm willing to offer my services to you, to USA Prepared, and I can be a teacher. I've been a teacher all my life. I'm bilingual. I work in the worst circumstances historically. I'm also a speech pathologist, neurolinguistic, linguistic stuff. I'm old. I've done tons. I find the world completely disturbing, and so I'm over here in a very little quiet village with no guns, and everybody knows each other. But I am disconnected because I need to do something. I need to teach. I need to help. I'm a public speaking teacher. I do conflict. I do astrophysics translation. I'm an editor. If you need help on your writing, if people need help on their talking, I'm not dead. I'm going into the new phase.
Yeah,
and now
you're welcome to contact me via email or telephone.
Okay.
Skype is often cheaper. I've got Skype. My address is simple, and but
it just cost me. It cost me 2 cents a minute to call you on the phone, so that's no big deal.
Well, 2 cents a minute sounds about right. I remember when the money was for nothing, and nothing is free. So,
okay, Mark Knopfler.
Yeah, Spain is about to go through a serious problem with the union, and I think that you would be better served working with children. Zurich is attempting to try to do the Montessori more properly. I think that's a good place because I think that our children are the single most important resource we have, and that will be the guarantee of the continuance of man. What we do...
Then why don't we teach children about communication? Why are you all never talking about communication?
Sounds to me like you just defined your job description.
Why is that you talk about, manifesting reality through this, that, and the other, but nobody talks about talking?
Tell you what, Margaret, hold that thought. Hold that thought. We'll be right back. Dr. Richard Allen Miller is with us. Margaret has joined us from the country of Spain. Margaret, you mentioned that people don't teach communications, and I've got two comments about that. One is here at USA Prepares, we are raising the bar. We're using polysyllabic discussions as compared to what the bald-headed shills, as I refer to them, on television shows, financial programs. They grunt, and they use words like booyah. We don't do that. We don't use such
Now, listen, I come from New Orleans, so we use all kind of words.
Well, let me continue. And here at USA Prepares, we teach people to think for themselves as compared to like the Rush Limbaughs of the world, who encourage their listeners to be what they call ditto heads. So, Rush, boy, thanks so much for thinking for me, because, man, I wouldn't know what to do if you didn't think for me. I'm a ditto head, Rush Limbaugh. We don't do that. We encourage people to think for themselves. So I just wanted to tell you that's my position on what we do here at USA Prepares.
Thank you very much, and sorry for overspeaking. I was thinking while waiting that so much of what you talk about has to do with communication and communication problems. And you explain it from your personal sort of subjective, everyday perspective. And then your problems are not uncommon. And so myself, as a theorist, think of them in terms of explanatory theories that everybody can use when dealing with, for instance, problems with a product delivery or a conflict in a traffic situation, or eating lunch at the supper table at home. I've had a lot of experience there. So my thing is strategic, effective communication. My paradigm is language, thought, and behavior. The question is, where do we begin to change things? With the language, with the thought, or with the behavior? And we can talk for hours about that. Every person's different. I've worked in prisons for 12 years. I work in psychiatric hospitals. I work in abuse centers. I work with the most tough cases. And so, Rick, I appreciate you thinking of me maybe being good with kids, but I've done kids all my life, and I've also done speech pathology with all age levels. Now, after being a speech pathologist, I changed to my PhD in speech communication. I'm more worried about what we call normal communication than abnormal communication. So my life is centered on effective communication, strategic communication in everyday situations, which we all are being bombed with.
How did they put it? You are not what you say. You are defined by what you do. Start with your children.
But when my friends call themselves stupid, or how stupid am I, or I'm ugly, or I can't do it, I jump right in, and I will not let them say that.
No,
because
it's not right.
They will become what they say.
Yeah.
They will become what they say. And so I say, either keep your mouth shut or say something good about it. Because we're trying to do this NLP thing, right?
Right.
And so
that's the deal.
Yep. So that's me, and I just want to help. I'm over here listening. I have a lot to offer, and I just want to kind of plug in to people of similar minds, similar values, similar energy, it feels like. So,
Margaret, I think what will happen is if you contact Richard Allen Miller, he'll give you his Skype handle and his email address. He'll share that with me, and then we can communicate, off the air, and we can talk about getting you on as an instructor, those kinds of things. But before you go, I have a question for you about, and I don't know what the term is, so I'm going to call it a cryptogram. This is the language that the millennials are speaking to each other. I noticed that young people don't use the telephone. When the three of us were growing up back in the 50s and the 60s, we would like to talk to our friends on the phone, and we'd talk to our friends in person. We'd have dinner at the family dinner table. We would communicate with each other. And now young people are using abbreviations, and one of them I find very offensive. But, a lesser offensive one is LOL, as in lots of laughs, or rolling on the floor laughing. I mean, they have cryptograms for that. How do you think, in your experience, that the shortening of the language to these cryptograms, plus the lack of face-to-face, one-on-one, or one-on-many communications, are going to affect the young people in terms of innovation and creativity and ability to just get along in society, as well as to move society forward with new product, new ideas, and new solutions? I know I said a mouthful.
Oh, my God. Sure. Well, I had several answers come to mind. The first one is a group needs a shared language. Subgroups develop their own sub-languages. Now, what game do they want to play, and where do they intend to work? It's just like, should there be one language, for example, English in the United States? In Spain, you must speak Spanish.
How did Putin put it? If you want to come to Russia and be a Russian, you speak Russian.
You definitely do, and I've considered doing it. Because they don't... They're eliminating all the GMO.
The thing that made our country strong. The pride.
Yeah.
I remember before Spanish, it was going to be Esperanto.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No,
and before that... Before that, it was French as the international language, which I studied, and I have not been able to use.
And before that, in my family, they were from Germany, Italy, French, and there was some other one in there. And, there were all kinds of languages around, but they had to come together over one language to have a good argument, you know what I mean? So yes. Now, the shortening of language, and let's just go to the LOL, okay, because I'm so out of it that my nephew, who is not particularly a stellar example, but he sent me LOL, and it took me a while to figure out it did not mean lots of love, because that's what it means to me. So what does all of this do? It creates chaos. It's the Tower of Babel. You have
Here's the next question, Margaret. The use of profanity in theater, cinema, movies, video, even YouTube. A guy will say, I'll show you how to change your shock absorbers on your vehicle, your pickup truck, for example. And you go to that, and then it's profanity laced. What is your take on why people have devolved into using profanity when it's absolutely, positively not necessary, and it degrades the performance at every level? What is your answer to that?
I think it's it's a reflection of the general decline, not only of the culture and language and thinking. Here we call it the registro. What level where are you at what level? So that's the importance of having a thesaurus. I know many words for the same concept in Spanish and in English. It's a fabulous tool. Why do people resort to physical violence? Because they cannot deal with it verbally. That's a quick summation of a lot of the domestic violence that goes on. And there's probably a gender difference as well. So if we're not going to go to violence, we're just going to drop down and not speak proper language, and we're going to start cursing, which is, vulgar, common, but it's easily understood. It's like if I shoot you the bird, you'll understand it. Okay? So maybe it's going to the common denominator. It's a real decline in society. Look, I left the States 20-something years ago. They didn't say suck on television. Are you kidding? We didn't even say it in public. Now, I just want to take a blowtorch and just blow the whole thing up. It's like, it's all out of control. What is going on? And don't make me start talking about universities and university teachers.
There's the right bonfire. There it is.
I'm a teacher, and I am the university, and I'm mad. I'm very angry.
I could almost tell.
Well, I'm a little bit shy, So
I can tell that too.
So it's just, life is so exciting. I can't believe this has happened to me. I can't believe our world has changed this much. This is not what I was planning for. I've been a good person, and now it's all haywire. And, but unfortunately, I am a problem solver. I like to get in there, identify a problem, let's do some brainstorming, let's look at possible strategies, try some, see if it works, if not, change. And, but let's, what are our values? What do we want? And why is nobody taking charge? What the hell is going on?
We actually, Margaret, I think we are taking charge, and we are leading by example. And let me explain exactly what I mean. One of the things that we do here at USA Prepares is we tell stories. And that's the Harvard method of teaching, okay, telling stories. What happened, what people did within the scenario, and what was the result. And you can decide whether, if that happens or something similar to that happens, maybe we can implement the same kind of strategy and solve the problem.
It's a case study approach. It's a case study approach.
That's exactly right. So that's what we do here, and we tell stories at USA Prepares, and we lead by example. We tell people, like if someone, I'll tell you what, let's hold this thought until we come back from the break, and I'll give you a perfect example.
Thank you very much.
And I'd love to hear more of from you. By the way, leave your contact information with our engineer during the break, off the air, okay? And please stay tuned. Class Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us, and I have a comment to make, and that is, how many broadcasts have you heard that have bright and energetic class members call in from Austria, New Brunswick, Canada, Guatemala, Australia, England, and Spain?
Wait. The phone is breaking up. Vincent, if you're talking to me, the phone is breaking up. Could you repeat it? I didn't get anything, but have you heard?
Okay. It was a rhetorical question. How many broadcasts have our class heard that have bright, energetic class members call in from Austria, New Brunswick, Canada, Guatemala, Australia, England, and Spain? That's a rhetorical question. The answer is hardly any. But here's a comment I'd like to make about leading by example, and then I'd like to hear your response. So I was at a conference, and I'm going to give this very quickly. I was at a conference, and I was at a luncheon, and I happened to be sitting right next to the speaker's little platform, and there were a couple hundred people at this luncheon. And two men asked to join us at our round table. And the table would hold between 8 and 10 people. And they were talking, and the speaker started speaking, and the acoustics were pretty poor in that room, and the announcement was just made that, hey, you got to be quiet because it's very difficult to hear. So 20 seconds after the speaker started speaking, I stood up, I walked over to these two guys who were talking at our table, and I embarrassed them in front of everybody. I used body language. I pointed to the speaker. I pointed to them. I pointed to the speaker. I pointed back to them. And I let everybody know, without them hearing me, that these two guys needed to be quiet. So in terms of leading, and they did. As a matter of fact, one of them at the end of the luncheon thanked me for reminding him to be polite. So what I'm saying is we can lead by example, and the stories that we tell are about exactly that. Here's something to happen. We're leading by example, and yes, you can, if you want to, you can do the same kinds of things, because here's what happened, here's what we did, and here's the result. Your comments, Margaret?
Yes. Well, to me, that's how teaching has always occurred. You have a leader or a teacher or a master, and you have the apprentice. We need models to learn from. Creativity is beautiful, but after you know something. I think first there should be discipline and constancy, and then you can go on and be creative.
People join me in Tillamook this next weekend. I'm going to be represented as the real Dr. Strange. And the kids today read comics and need role models, real role models on how to walk their own talk. And it isn't walking my talk, it's walking their own and knowing inside what they're doing. That's where it all starts.
They have to become to know who they are. Yes. Now, how do you get to be there? I come from a family that always tore me down. Okay? So I've had a very difficult life. But where do you get the strength from? How do you know who you are? And I wish I could be there. And there are airplanes. Or maybe they don't even call them that anymore. Maybe they call them jets. I don't know. But anyway, Half Wheels will travel maybe in the future. Vincent, I want to respond to your thing about saying, and I did hear a little bit of, I really got a little bit of revenge sort of in your voice for saying, and I embarrassed them. Okay, I've done a lot of things in life that I probably would have done if I had waited a little bit longer. But first of all, I agree with you. You have to stop the movement, stop the behavior, change the game. And I just wouldn't have, I would have probably not been pointing and such. Maybe I would have gotten up on the table. I certainly would have called for something like rules of order and asked for silence and equal respect. And the speaker always has the right to stop speaking until the other idiots have shut up.
Well, I didn't take it that far. I just decided that I would put them in their place because they were wasting my time and everybody else's. And it was unacceptable.
And it was rude. It was rude. If they need to talk, go outside. I mean, they weren't even conscious. It's a shame.
Hey, we've got to go. Margaret, we're out of time.
Bye.
Please contact Rick
Thank
Miller.
you.
He'll share the contact information with us. Margaret in Spain, thank you so much. Dr. Richard Allen Miller, hey, thanks so much for being with us. And let me know when you get the contact information from Margaret. Thank you so much, Doc Ram.